Hi everybody, my name is Mimi Brophy. I am Senior Sales and Marketing Director with the residents of Vinnin Square in Swampscott, Mass. Today my guest is Kelly McCarthy. Kelly is a published author of the Brass Ring Memoirs, as well as Memory Care Engagement Director for LCB Senior Living, which oversees the residents at Vinnin Square. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You know, Kelly, there are so many different questions surrounding dementia, and so what I'd like to do is be able to talk about a couple of things, such as caregiver stress, also living at home versus living in a community, such as an assisted living that has a memory care component to it. So if you don't mind, I'd love to go through a couple of questions here that I think will be helpful to our audience.
Great.
Wonderful. So my first question is, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
You know, that's a great question, and I've been doing this a long time. In whatever venue that I'm in, oftentimes people ask that question, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? In chapter 5 of my book, I really break that down. If you think about dementia, dementia is a symptom, right? So even if you think about a common cold, one of the symptoms of a common cold is a sneeze. But also, you don't just sneeze for a cold. You also have, you sneeze when you have an allergy. So dementia is a symptom that is prevalent in Alzheimer's disease, but it's also prevalent in other diseases that can cause confusion. And so that's the difference pretty much. And we also call it the umbrella, right? So that if you think about an umbrella and you have the word dementia on it, underneath there are over 100 different diseases that can cause dementia. And some of them, for example, could be Lewy bodies, a vascular, which could be stroke, Parkinson's, not necessarily, but it can, PICS, even AIDS can cause dementia. So there's so many different diseases under that umbrella, under that symptom.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for clearing that up, because I know that's a frequent question that I get as well. You know, the other thing, can you talk a little bit about reversible versus irreversible memory loss?
Absolutely, you know, and sometimes people don't realize this, but people that are not cognitively challenged, do not have a disease that causes a dementia, can actually have what they call delirium. Delirium can be caused by urinary tract infections. It can be caused by dehydration, malnutrition, other infections that a senior can have. So it's really important to know that individuals that do not even have a cognitive challenge, as we age, we're more susceptible for that fever or that infection to cause a reversible memory loss, and again, known as delirium.
So somebody that, you know, 1 minute seems fine, but the next minute may seem a little off. It could be something as simple as a urinary tract infection?
Absolutely, and you know, sometimes family members will see somebody and their loved one and think, oh my gosh, my mother's getting, you know, Alzheimer's, or my mother's getting dementia. And so the one thing that we always do in our communities is so very important is we rule out any medical conditions. So you don't want to just assume something, you want to make sure that the person gets checked, because it could be just as simple as needing an antibiotic if it's someone who's sick, or you know, again, being dehydration, needing some fluids, electrolytes.
Kelly, that's so helpful. Thank you so much. So my next question is, can you talk a little bit about keeping the brain engaged and stimulated? I know that's so important for our seniors, especially those that have memory impairment.
Absolutely. A structured day is key, and then putting the elements like we do at our communities, physical activity, emotional activity is so very important, cognitive and social. And so these are programs that we do to increase someone's well-being, their mood, and all of the great things that can happen. And so the other thing about engagement is it helps people maintain a routine, right? And I think you and I speak about this often. We talk about, you know, it takes you and I about 21 days to make or break a habit. With somebody with memory loss, it takes about 35 days, depending on their cognitive level, which means that individuals with memory care can still learn. Now, we don't want to keep saying, do you remember, right? We don't want to say, well, you can remember, I know you can, we just have to do it for 35 days. That's not the point. But it's about creating a familiar aspect to their life. Sure. It's about creating a novel learning. When people come into our communities, we want it to be a home-like environment. the fact of the matter is it takes a little while for people to adjust. And so it's important to maintain a structure and a routine and engagement to really promote that well-being, and a routine that it's going to be familiar to them. And they can absolutely learn a new routine, and that's good for the brain because it creates new neural pathways.
Absolutely. You know, what are some of the safeguards? If somebody is keeping their loved one at home, what are some safeguards that they can put in place to protect their loved one in their day-to-day environment?
And that's so extremely important. And the answer is going to depend on whatever cognitive level that person is. But let's just take, for example, that as someone's declining, safety issues are off, right? So their judgment is off, and they may use products that are that could be dangerous if they're using them or consuming them in a way that's not intended. For example, Tide detergent, looking like something to drink, right? And so we want to be very mindful that if you are caring for that 20% of individuals who are living at home with this disease, you want to be very mindful of what are the obstacles that are facing them? Are they able to use certain products in the home safely? If they're not, we want to make sure that we're securing those products up and having them use them under supervision. It's not that we want to stop them from using a product and decreasing their independence, but we want to promote that they're using it successfully and safely.
Okay.
So it's all going to depend.
It depends upon the person. So the one thing that I have heard about was some call it a silver alert, or some call it, it might be a different name in your community, but it's a place where someone can take a loved one to their local police department and have somebody registered. Would you consider that a safeguard as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of the things that Massachusetts is doing, I'm so extremely proud of being a part of it, is we're creating dementia-friendly neighborhoods. And so absolutely, if you have a loved one who's living either with you and you go to work every day, or that's living with you, and there's times where they're going to be alone, you definitely want to reach out, call the Alzheimer's Association's hotline, talk to them about some of the resources out there. They actually have a medical alert bracelet that a person can wear. It's very discreet. It actually looks like if you have an illness, right, and you have to wear that medical alert bracelet. But in back, it's actually purple and not red, and it says, "Hi, my name is," right, and there's a memory, a cognitive impairment. So it's very discreet on there, but someone's able to call that 1-800 number, and there might be like an SR5 number or whatever that digit is that they can call up, and then they know exactly where that person lives, what medications they're on, who is their caregiver. So that's also a great resource. But yes, calling the local fire department, identifying if they have a program that you can register your loved one on, because if they like to walk, again, setting up a routine. Let's say somebody leaves their house and they take a left, they go to the park, and they take that left and they go all the way around, right? But there's construction. So as they're taking that first left, there's a detour, now they're taking a right. They can absolutely get lost if that's not a part of their routine.
Sure.
So again, setting up safeguards like that is something very important. Another thing that I know that a lot of people use is the Tile app. It's an app that you can purchase online or through Amazon and the like. And basically it's an app that can kind of support, if you have a gentleman and you can put it in their wallet, you can stitch it in a coat pocket, but it'll help you locate that person if they're in that vicinity. And so that's an option too.
What a wonderful resource.
Yeah, nothing is for sure, but these are things that can help you and set you up for success in this journey.
That's wonderful. The next thing that I want to talk about is color. As we do work together, and so color is important. You know, the color yellow on our plates, and so how important is that color contrasting in somebody's day-to-day life with dementia?
Great. So we use colors in our buildings, but if you're at home and you're supporting your loved one at home, you can absolutely use colors there too. So we use yellow, and the reason why we use yellow plates is that it stimulates our appetite. If you think about McDonald's, Burger King, right? They're red and yellow. And so these are things that are for advertisement that they use to have people consume more food. So the reason why we didn't go with red is red, I'm going to say 3 colors. Red, orange, and yellow are active colors. They get us moving, they get us up, and they get us excited. The one thing about red is if you've ever heard anybody here saying, I'm seeing red.
Absolutely.
Right? And that means that they're agitated. So we need to be mindful that there is a study out there stating that red is actually can be an aggravator.
Oh.
So we don't want to give large doses of red, even though it does increase somebody's food intake by about 27%. Yellow is absolutely another active color. Not as active as red, so you're not going to get as, agitated, but you still can. But the fact that what it does do is it increases that food intake. If you think about restaurants, oftentimes they use lemon in their water. Again, yellow being that color, and also lemon increases a person's salivary glands. So these are some good things to do and to support your loved one. If you see the stage, we're all in green. LCB's branded colors are green. All of our uniforms that our associates wear have a lime green top, and we use tan pants. The reason being is that as we age, regardless of a cognition challenge, lime green is one of the last colors that we see effectively. It's a color that we gravitate towards because it's a color that we can see successfully. As we age, the lens of our eyes become harder, they're more rigid, they become yellow in nature, and so this lime green is a color that actually stands out, and so that's why we use those colors. Black is a color that looks like a hole. If you've read the book Still Alice or seen the movie, they talk about that rug that was in front of the door that was a very scary transition carpet. So we're very mindful in our environments and our communities not to use a threshold that has a dark color. So if you have a color in your home, a transition carpet, maybe a black carpet in front of a kitchen sink, you might want to pull that up. And sometimes people say, well, if I don't want them to go into this area, I'll put a black mat. And I want to be dignified. And so I would rather try to encourage a person to be another way or to have them going to another area than to scare them away from an area you don't want them to be at. So just be cautious of black and make sure you do it in a dignified way.
Sure. Wonderful. I mean, that's...
And those are just some of the ways. Contrast is so important. You think about people's bathrooms. Oftentimes, what color is the toilet?
White.
What color is the shower stall?
White.
What color is usually the floor?
White.
Yeah, and the walls?
White.
Yeah.
Or a light color. So,
so it's either beige or white or light. And so if you think about it, those are the most difficult. White is the hardest color to see. So now what you have is you have somebody that has memory loss. They're in a bathroom that's a lot of white, right? Maybe not a lot of contrast. They're going to have a very hard time identifying where the toilet is. Sure. They're not going to want to let go of that grab bar when they're going to sit down because the shower chair in back of them is white. Right. So some of the things that you can do at home very inexpensively is take a contrasting towel like green or blue, maybe even the person's favorite color, and place that down on that shower chair, and that'll help that person really be able to support a nice transition into that chair. But it's important to know that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that I often talk to families about is caregiver stress. So can you talk a little bit about the importance, and I know there's a chapter in your book about taking care of yourself as the caregiver, and you do have a great analogy from the plane, being on a plane. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So you bring this up, I'll tell you, when I wrote this book, I made chapter 1 about taking care of yourself, and the editor said to me, hey, shouldn't it be the brass ring first? Because that's the title of your book. And I said, well, read chapter 1, let me know what you think afterwards. And after she read it, she realized, you know what, you're right, that needs to be chapter 1. Oftentimes, caregivers put themselves in the back seat, and you can't do that. And so what Mimi was talking about before is I traveled in a plane for about 10 years, traveling all over the country, and learned so many valuable lessons through my journey as a caregiver supporter. And one of the things I used to hear the flight attendant always say is, put your own mask on first before attending the person next to you. And I think that that's something that I've always taken with me, and I share that with frontline care teams at our communities, but also with family members. You guys are so great at taking care of the person that you're caring for, but you're not so great oftentimes at taking care of yourself. And it's so important for you to do that, because if you don't, then that person that you're caring for doesn't have anybody to help them. So it's important to make sure that you pay attention to your key indicators, take care of yourself, sleep well. If you can't and you're having problems with sleeping, if you have something that just is, maybe your blood pressure is high, blood sugar, or whatever it is, get in there and get checked. You have to take care of yourself, because if you don't, you're no good to the person you're caring for. And there are statistics out there, and I say this with love in my heart, and I don't say this for fear. There was a study out there in Pittsburgh. It was a 4-year study. They took partners, husband and wife or spouses, that were caring. One of them were caring for the other. One was either a physical ailment or a cognitive. Then they took another set of husband and wife or partners and the like, and they didn't have any ailments at all. And so they did a 4-year study. And in this 4-year study, they saw a 66 higher mortality rate in the person who was caring for someone that needed either physical or cognitive than they did the person that didn't. So what does that tell us?
Right.
What do you think it tells us?
It tells us that we're not taking care of ourselves. And, you know, in the community that I work in, that's one of the things that we see. We have these families come in or children of, you know, somebody that's in distress, and someone comes in and my dad just died suddenly, my mom just died suddenly, they were the primary caregiver. And unfortunately what happens is folks tend to, like Kelly said, they tend to neglect themselves. And so thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important. You know, sometimes we feel selfish maybe putting ourselves first, but again, you know, put that mask on first before you help somebody else. So great analogy.
Thanks.
You know, we talked a little bit earlier about keeping the brain engaged and stimulated. So in being a caregiver, how important is it with that interaction with the person that we're caring for, whether we're using an agency in our home or we're the primary caregiver or our friends?
Yeah.
How important is that we are engaged and acting with that person we're caring for?
Yeah, that's a great question, because oftentimes I'll hear family members, especially if there's just one person who's the sole caregiver, you'll hear that one caregiver say, you know, I'm doing it all myself. Whether it's a husband or a wife or a daughter or the son, and so they're getting the meals, they're getting the person up, they're getting washed and dressed, maybe taking them to the doctors, they're getting them ready for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, getting ready for bed, right? On all of these tasks that they're doing, and that's what they're considered, right?
Sure.
Tasks. So oftentimes, they're placing the food down and they're walking over, and instead of sitting down with the person, they're cleaning the dishes and getting ready for the next task. And so it's so important to do me a favor, grab another plate and sit down, right? Sit down and engage. And I think sometimes people worry because they don't maybe oftentimes know how to engage, especially if somebody has expressive aphasia where they're not able to communicate the way that we're used to. So they may say a few things that are nonsensical, then some things will come out. If somebody's in a good spirit and they're talking and it may not make sense to us, laugh with them. If they're concerned and say, that shouldn't happen again, say, you're right, that shouldn't happen again. You don't need to understand everything a person's saying, but to have a conversation with them. Inside, they feel like everything is good and that they're saying exactly what they need to say. And so you want to be that person that, as long as they're not hurting themselves, be that person that makes them feel good. A part in my chapter, there's chapter 4 in my book, I talk about peacock moments. And oftentimes we're so busy, we lose sight of creating pride, beauty, and confidence in the people that we're caring for, and we're caring for ourselves too.
Sure.
So that, you want to make sure that you're, creating peacock moments and then also receiving those peacock moments. So, and I'm sure, when you have a loved one in your office and they're, kind of maybe depressed and feeling sad about the situation, when you look at them and say, listen, I know this isn't easy, you're doing a great job, right? That's a peacock moment. And that family member needs to feel proud, beautiful, and confident. I get it that we don't always get it right. I've been doing this for a long time, and you as well as I, we're experts, but that doesn't mean we get it right all the time, and neither do family members. And on this journey, it's not easy. And so you want to make sure you're creating as many peacock moments as you can, and also making sure that you accept a peacock moment. When somebody says you're doing a great job, don't just say, oh, well, it's my wife, I have to. It's till death do us part, I have to, right? No, you don't have to do anything, but you did. And so kudos to you. You're doing a great job. You're not always going to get it right. It's okay.
We all need more peacock moments, don't we?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So winding down, one of the biggest questions that I get asked is, how will I know when it's time to have my loved one join a community? Yeah. And so can you talk a little bit about maybe what that looks like? And I know it looks different for everybody, but kind of some signs that people can look for.
Yeah, so I think, where this disease is progressive, I think the first thing that you need to do as a group, and so we all have a support system. You may not think it, but you do. You have the Alzheimer's Association's always on your side. The physician that is caring for your loved one is on your side. Yourself, your neighbors that may love your loved one who keeps an eye out for them when they're getting the mail, all that stuff. You need to all take that into consideration and think about, what are the services that I'm going to need to take care and maintain my loved one for as long as it takes, right? Now, this disease is progressive, which means it's a terminal illness, which means that as it progresses, you're going to need to set up services. And so whether that's in-home, that's adult daycare, outside services, or residential living. One of the things I have in my book is I have a brass ring oath. And in this brass ring oath, I think it's number 4, it says, I will live in the moment, yet plan for the future. I don't want you to worry about the future, but you need to plan for it. And safety is the biggest issue, I always say. So if we're thinking about, when do I feel it's going to be necessary, first and foremost, I'd want to make sure that you're setting up systems in the home that's keeping your loved ones safe. That's the most important. And so, those things are like securing products that may be used inappropriately and the like, really keeping an eye, making sure you do safe return, checking with the fire department. All those things can be very supportive. You kind of know when it's time when you start questioning when it's time, right? I think that that's pretty much the scenario. But you want to set up your team and really pay attention to what's going on and how we can support, kind of the whole family in that aspect, or your whole team.
Right. And I think it's also important to give yourself permission to let it be okay, to let it be the time. So lastly, my question is, when someone joins an assisted living community, whether they're joining independent, assisted, or even a memory care community, what happens is we want to, and our other communities want to create a home feeling. So what is something or things that someone can bring with them to a memory care community, because that's our topic today? What can they bring with them to really make it feel like home?
Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head. You said feel like home. If you think about it, when we get into our house tonight, it's been a cold day, we get to be home, and we have the familiar, articles around us that make us feel warm, make us feel confident, comfortable, safe. All those adjectives just pop up about what home is. Home necessarily isn't a place as much as it is a feeling. So when somebody comes into our community, oftentimes family members can feel, guilty, and they'll say, oh, I'm going to get Mom all new furniture. Her furniture's, old. I want to get her all new stuff. Or the husband says, oh, my wife's going to have all new stuff. I want to have, I'll take the old stuff and give her the new. What's really important is that if they have a bed that they've used all their lives, and it's a sleigh bed from the grandmother, or there's products that they use, and we joke a lot about my Dove soap. It's in the book. I travel for a living, and Dove soap makes me feel like I'm home, right? 2/3 moisturizing cream. It's that beautiful smell. It's mine. Right. And so hotels don't have that, and I don't bring it with me. But when I get home, I know I'm home. Yeah. So products that people use every day, We want to make sure that they're using them in our buildings, or in a residential setting. The habits that they do, I always say don't judge me, but I brush my teeth in the shower, right? So if somebody brushes their teeth in the shower, don't stop them from doing that. We want to make sure that they're doing it in our place so that it feels like they're home, right? So any of the habits that they've built through the years, it's important for us to know. I always say to family members, listen, when you're going into a residential living setting, your loved one is going in, do me a favor, the more that you share with us, the more that you share the habits and the things that they do, the more successful they're going to become. The things that we may lose sight of, and then they end up saying, I want to go home, it's because we're not creating a feeling of home.
Sure. And you had just touched on something that I was going to say. The more information that we have, the better we're able to care for your loved one. So Kelly, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
It was a pleasure.
And I know that your knowledge has just helped so many people. Kelly's book, The Brass Ring Memoirs, can be purchased on Amazon. Again, I'd like to thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to bringing you our next topic. Thank you, everybody.